Hugo.
Ego.
Is it on?
It's on.
Yeah,
It's
it's
on.
on, yeah.
Yeah, it's on.
It's recording, right?
It's recording. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode for Finding Voices podcasts. I'm Tom Wheeler.
I'm Ramesh, man.
I'm Rafik Mr
Alexander Kuzmenko, and today we have two special guests, Rafik and Ramesh. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
And today I thought we'll talk about ego and stuttering, how those things affect each other.
Ramesh, let's start with you. How do you think your ego affects your stuttering?
I think my ego affects my stuttering in many ways. I think it gets in the way of my progress because when I got my ego, it sort of gives me a defense mechanism in order to fight against my external environment. So what it does is it sort of defends me against the external world, if that's understood.
First of all, can we define what we mean by ego? Who can give a good definition?
I think it means what you would like the outside world to see of yourself. So you have an idea in your head about how you want to be perceived, and you don't want to do anything which sort of compromises how others may see you. So, for example, for stammering, you wouldn't want to use techniques because you don't want to be seen as a stammerer, even though you can't help it anyway. That's how I see it.
Do we all agree with that definition?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think the ego is part of our brain that acts as a defense shield.
As a defense shield. Alex, where do you stand on the ego and stuttering?
I think our ego, it's an image of a mask we want to wear at some point, and everything else is just we go around and about to this goal. And I divide our ego probably into two parts or three parts. The part that Ramesh mentioned, that just responsive as instincts, like defense mechanisms, but ego is a psychological term, I think, so it should be described like it's, well, first of all, I think ego is unintelligent and it's a force, psychological force.
How does your ego manifest, Alex? If you have one left.
Oh yeah, I like it. My ego is so inflated. My ego is huge. My
I
ego
can see it from here, actually.
manifests. Yeah, my ego manifests in my disillusional wishes, or in my hunt for some sort of legacy or glory. And I know it feels good, but from what I read about it, I better not have those wishes. You know, and it's always my ego talking.
How do others' egos talk?
I'm not sure.
With me, I think my ego sort of stops me from achieving things sometimes. Or it makes me stutter more, used to make me stutter more, because it was defending me against the external threats of the world, the external environment. But I think we're born with the ego because when we're born, we do things like bawl and sort of cry, and I think this sort of is building our ego from an early age. So we're born with an ego, but it's up to us how we control our ego. And I think if the ego gets in the way, as Professor Stephen Peters talks about in Chimps Paradox, it can really affect us. So we have to close off this chimp.
So the chimp is the ego?
To me, it's part of the ego.
It's part of the ego.
It's part of the mind.
What's this book that you're talking about, Ramesh? The Chimp's
called the-
Paradox.
It's called The Chimp Paradox. It's written by Professor Steve Peters.
I've heard that Steve Peters worked with the Liverpool FC football team,
Yes, he did.
and with a degree of success.
Yeah, and he worked with Victoria Pemberton, who was an Olympic cyclist, and also Ronnie O'Sullivan, who's a snooker player and world champion 6 times over, I think.
Wow. Do you recommend the Chimp's Paradox for other people who stutter? And why would you recommend it if you do?
I recommend it because the brain works in different ways, and the way that I think it's helped me is that you got to understand that you got the human part, which is a logical side to your brain, and then you got the chimp side to your brain, which is the side that bothers you and makes you angry and makes you have a high sex drive and defends you against the world. So we have to make sure that we're controlling this chimp. Otherwise we get out of control and become mass murderers and people who are psychopaths.
In scientific terms, am I right in thinking that the chimp part of the brain is called the limbic system,
Yeah,
and the thinking, rational part of the brain is called the frontal lobe?
yeah.
Correct. Okay, good. Have either of you read The Chimp Paradox? If so, what do you think?
I want to know what Ramesh thinks about the computer part.
Oh yeah, the computer part as well, yeah.
Tell us about the computer part.
Well, to me the computer is a part of the brain that processes all of your chimp and your human, and it helps you make the right decisions.
So it takes both sides into the equation and balances them out.
Yeah.
Makes the right decision.
Yeah, to me, yeah.
Okay. Could the computer be an analogy for a higher sense of being? In that it's something which stands outside the brain?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, most of these self-development books speak about 3 parts: the body, the mind, and the soul. And maybe we can translate it to it being the soul, the spiritual part of our body.
So the soul is a computer.
Well, it could be the enlightened part of your mind.
Okay. What does everyone else think about the idea of the computer being part of our brain and part of the brain that makes the right decision, rather the kind of thing that thinks around our brain? What do you guys think about that?
I don't know too much about what the computer is, so if you have any thoughts on it, you can add.
I think he should have divided into 3 parts. I think the computer is a part of a human. So you have a human, and by human I mean a way of thinking and the way of operating. Like we think into words, right? But chimp, he doesn't think into words. Chimp is unintelligent, but chimp is in a way on our side. We should make a friends with the chimp, and the computer just can't help us to process the data more. Are we recording?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the computer is a tool. So what we have to do is make peace with the chimp. How do we make peace with an unintelligent thing, but very
Ramesh?
powerful thing?
How do we make peace with our chimp, having read the Chimp Paradox?
With myself and my solution, I try to treat my chimp. So when I'm working hard, I always treat my chimp to bananas. And this means having a drink or coffee or doing what I find great, like go to the gym. You have to control the chimp. You have to make the chimp very happy, so you feed it bananas.
But if you fed the chimp, but if your intention was to make the chimp happy, surely you would just let the chimp do what it wants to do. Or do you mean to supplicate the chimp, but not enough for it to gain control of you?
You have to I think it's a former, or the final point that you made was
latter.
where you have to supplement it and to make peace with it. Otherwise, you end up as a psycho and you start murdering people, or you start doing some crazy stuff.
And we don't want that, do we?
No, we don't.
No, we
We
don't.
want
That's the
peaceful
right
people.
answer. I've been training you to say that all week.
The topic is ego, right? And you, Ramesh, mentioned that ego prevents you to do things in life you want to do. And we already established that chimp represents your ego, at least the sexual one, right? Yeah, so when chimp prevents you from doing things, right? Example, you fear of having certain talk with a certain person in a certain situation. It just feels uncomfortable, feels like a stuttering, like as hell situation, right? So that's fear of talking. Chimp will not know the details, but chimp will feel that you fear to talk. So he would prevent you from talking by giving you stuttering blocks. So how to undo the chimp is to, for example, allow yourself to use tools or go ahead and start on purpose,
Yeah.
right? And that will make a chimp realize, oh, look, guys, this situation is no more fearful. So next time you, Ramesh, go do something like that, I'll just have a nap, you know.
Makes sense.
I fully agree, but you need to desanitize it, chimp.
Desanitize it.
Yeah, like you have to get over
Desensitize.
Desensitize.
Sorry.
Desensitize or
it. My language is pretty
desanitize?
funky today, but hey, it's cool. I'm sorry, that's the second word, formulation. No, but seriously, you have to try and act on the chimp. And I think using the weapons and also positive thinking helps.
Here.
Because I use things like positive affirmations. Because when I use those, it starts to act on my chimp.
Yeah.
I say things like, I am a more confident person today.
Anything else?
I have the willpower to overcome everything that I've got. And I'm a fluent person.
Does anyone else use positive affirmations in their day-to-day routine?
No. Should do though.
Alex?
They're also called mantras, sorry.
Yeah.
Alex?
It's all about mindset. Yeah, I do affirmations.
What,
I-
like?
I listen Kennedy's speech about the moon when he gave it in the Rice College, Texas.
How
This
does
is-
it go? What does he talk about in that speech?
He talks about that when our knowledge increases, our ignorance unfolds. So we have to be vigilant about it. And blah blah blah, and like this country was conquered, but not those who waited, a little longer. Or he tells a story about this guy who would die on Everest, and when they ask him like, why do you want to climb the Everest, and he said, because it's there. So like, why do I want to get a fluency? Because it's there. There is no fucking reason why, but I know it's there, so I want it.
Where do we all stand on fluency?
I think for at least myself, the goal is to say what I want to and when I want to say it, and that would include going into any situation which I want to, and not fearing having to say a certain word or to ask for a certain thing, or to talk about a certain topic. It's about like not holding back and just being able to do what I want to. And I think that in terms of ego, I think that we all struggle with that because we all have these techniques and these things which we know could help us become more fluent, but we avoid them because we don't want to be seen how we don't want to be seen. So, to do contacts with people outside, we know that afterwards we would feel much better, we would speak better, we would hold back less, but we don't want to actually do them as much as we should do because we are afraid of the initial fear, and also to make contact, how the people who we are speaking to, how they would perceive us. So I think that ego is a big thing which we need to address in order to improve as people who stammer. So yeah, so that is one of the most important things that we need to look into to improve as speakers.
Ramesh, where do you stand on fluency?
I think it's something that we should work towards. Why join a speech therapy program and not aim for fluency?
What if, by aiming exclusively for fluency, it makes your speech worse? What if?
Then it shows that we need to work on our speech and work on our mind and everything else and work on our physical side. So if your fluency isn't there, you have to work towards it. You have to work towards becoming more fluent.
Why do you want to become more fluent?
Good question.
What's wrong with stuttering?
There's nothing wrong with stuttering.
So why would you want to become fluent?
It's like Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. Why did he do that?
Because he had a problem.
That's right. That's a good answer.
Didn't do it randomly,
No.
did it?
I want to become a better speaker. For me, fluency will come through becoming a better speaker, through working on myself and doing speech at Toastmasters and coming on Finding Voices 99.
But answer me my first question.
Yeah.
Why is being fluent important?
I think people think it's important because it helps them with their life and also helps them
How does it help them?
find a job and also gain more wealth and become richer, and also to find a relationship, have kids, have a lovely wife, buy a 3-bedroom house in, I don't know, Beaconsfield,
Lovely place, Beaconsfield.
and send your kids to private school. Yeah, so I
Which
think
school?
fluency helps. Or I don't think fluency is a byproduct though, because you need to work on your mind and everything else, and you need to work on your life.
It's a holistic thing then.
Yeah. And this is why, when I heard your previous podcast with Rama Shiva, and you've mentioned other people in our support group online on WhatsApp, you mentioned things like when people have children, when people have a purpose in life, their speech gets better. They've got a purpose in life. So I heard that in your interview with Rama Shiva, that you need a purpose in life, and when you found that purpose, or you found that woman and you've got kids and things are running smoothly, your speech gets better.
It does. Do you agree with that?
I've never been married, dude.
But do you suspect that would be the case?
Maybe, because your mind is more stable. You're in a more stable place. You're more happier, and when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're in a higher place on it. You've overcome the basic needs of needing food, water, security. You're on a higher platform, working towards self-actualization.
Good point. An interesting point you make, Ramesh, earlier is about the importance of fluency for earning wealth and how it leads to more money. There is an element of truth to that, in that the average stammerer earns 20k less than the average fluent person.
Yeah, but when you look at the world and you look at people with disabilities or learning difficulties like stammering, like hearing loss, like blind people, they're more likely or less likely to progress above the
I
threshold.
think it's less likely.
Less likely. Yeah. Sorry,
They
I changed it to less.
They aren't like,
Advantage.
wow, you know, this guy's a stammer, pay him 20k more.
Yeah,
We wish.
because really, I think that with people who have got learning difficulties, it's more harder to find advancement. People have all these generalizations about people, and I think this is where I think that we need to work against it and present ourselves in the best possible way. Yeah, speech is important, but I think self-development is important. Developing yourself. For example, with Ruben, he took up martial arts to work on his mind, and he's doing very well as a stammerer.
Mm,
So there's a lot of things that people need to work upon in life.
good point. In what other ways do we work on ourselves, boys?
Do you want to go first?
I want to expand on your ideas actually, Rafik. I thought about it. Why can't we use our techniques, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we know that the result will be good. I think the answer is why we can't. Well, it's our ego talking.
Yeah.
And our ego doesn't want us to be open about our stuttering fact. We want to be like normal or fluent. So we want to act like it and we can't. Alright, so we have to go around or through it. And with the stuttering, we just have to unhide it maybe completely, entirely. So like, I don't want to do contact because I just don't want to stutter with people.
Yeah.
Either I'm in charge of it or not in charge of it, because it sounds same to me. But there is a benefit on being in charge of deliberate disfluency. Is that you can talk to anyone, say anything,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and it's always a comfort zone because we're kind of doing it in a safe environment with people, with friends and stuff. Well, alone it's still safe. We don't ask anything crazy unless you're a mesh, right? Exactly. So why is still hard?
I don't know why it's still hard. I remember when I did my first phone interview, I wasn't using any techniques or anything, and I could barely speak. But then, like when I focused on my techniques and all of that, and I stammered on purpose, especially at the start of the next phone interview that I had, it was with like a big company. Afterwards, I felt that it's much better to stutter on purpose than to do it with no control. So why is it that I still don't want to stammer on purpose to say the words which I struggle on easier rather than always struggling? I still don't know why, but like what we are talking about today, it's about the ego, and we need to fight the ego to realize that we need to go through these stages in order to benefit in the long run. So keep on using deliberate fluency, keep on using techniques, keep on using our breathing techniques. And you asked about fluency. Should our goal be fluency straight away? I think that is very dangerous because we may become disheartened very fast if you say to yourself, oh, I have done this many contacts, I have used my technique for this amount of time, and I'm still not fluent. We should measure our progress on how we are improving compared to when we first started,
Good point.
compared to where we are at the time that we are thinking to ourselves, why am I not fluent right now? So it's more of a journey than I will start here, I will end here. So we just have to keep on going. I'm not sure about you guys, but there was a point where I was very fluent in life, and then I just stopped working on my speech and on myself, and then I just went straight back down. So we should see our progress in our speech as a long-term journey, and to keep maintaining what we were doing to improve.
When was this? When were you fluent for a period?
This was about 1 year after the Maguire program, when I was having a lot of very hard interviews after university. Like all of the biggest companies in what I studied in, I had interviews for them, and I was telling myself that if I speak the way that I'm speaking now, I would never get the job. So I worked really hard on my speech, and I reached a point where I was having interviews for like 1 hour and a half. So we were meant to be in the room for just an hour, but we were having such a good conversation that we went over to 1 hour and a half.
Fantastic.
And I would have never been able to speak with someone for that amount of time if I stayed how I was. And then I sort of moved away from what I was studying, and because I work for myself, there is not such a high demand to speak very well.
Yeah.
So I started practicing every single day, doing contacts and all of that. So then I sort of slipped back down. But then just recently I've realized, why can't I do the same things for my personal life, for my lives with my friends, for my social life? Why can't I put in that same effort, not just for work and for making money and becoming rich? Why can't I do it just for myself and for my family and things like that? So it's like a lifelong thing, and we shouldn't just aim for fluency straight away. We should just keep going and see where we end up in the end.
Yep.
Very good approach. Very good approach.
I agree with that.
Just to reiterate my earlier question, in what way do you improve your speech in other, well, not your speech, but in what ways do you work on yourself in other parts of your life? Do you practice a particular kind of meditation? How do you think you work on yourself, or do you not at all?
I don't really work on like anything like meditation. I force myself not to become upset over small things, because we all do that. Say if we are driving and then we think that someone is an inferior driver to us, and then we get road rage. Just minor things in life, just don't get upset about them. I find to be more calm is a very helpful thing for our speech. So it's just about my overall personality, which I keep mind of, to be more calm, which would help me breathe better, which would help me speak better. But I still haven't like looked into meditation or positive affirmations yet, and I think that once I do, then I can reach an even higher stage in my speech. But I'm not sure if you guys work on your personality or any mindful techniques on a day-to-day basis for your speeches.
Ramesh?
Yeah, I work on my personality and I work on my mind all the time. I read self-development books, I do positive affirmations on phrases which help me 10 times a day. For example, I am a more confident person today. And I repeat this to remind myself and to build a stronger person. And I agree with you, because I think speech is something that we improve on a daily basis. Every day we're a different person. My way of thinking about things is this: I think overnight we sort of die and we become a new person the next day. And I think on this ever evolving thing we become better every day. And I think for me, I have to work on my mind every single day because I want to achieve new things. I don't let my stammer hinder me as much. I just want to push on with life and keep on improving. I think using techniques is something that I'm not scared of. I love doing it because it empowers me. And also the use of voluntary stuttering is very important because it controls the stammer, because you're advertising and you're working on your speech. And I think if we don't do this, I think our speech can go backwards. So I think we have to always continuously improve every day. We're a different person every day, but we have to keep on moving forward with our mindset, keep moving forward with our speeches, and I
No
think
holding back.
no holding back. Yeah, but in terms of things, we can't be scared, and I think if we do stop, then we go backwards. But if we keep on working forward with positivity, working forward with improving ourselves as people, then we become stronger. And I think this is where people, there's a difference here. I think there's stammerers who are victims of stammering, and there's stammerers who are happy stammering but are happy to work on every day. And I'm the second one.
I would say for ego, there is a technique which I'm sure we have all done, is the hang-up drill. So basically we get stuck on a word for a set amount of time, and our goal is for the listener to hang up the phone. And my experience of the hang-up drill is that once I hear the listener is okay to keep listening, I can speak absolutely fluently for the remainder of the phone call. So in terms of ego, once we advertise ourselves as stammerers, and we are okay with the fact that we are stammerers, then we can achieve much better fluency. So if any of our listeners want to try the hang-up drill, try it and see how you feel afterwards, and then you get a better understanding on how your ego is hindering your progress in your speech.
And I think there's other ways, such as disclosures, that can help. But I think deliberate disfluency or voluntary stammering is a very important tool. If you master that, then you improve in your speech, and you're always mindful that you're working on your speech. So using voluntary stuttering is very effective because it's working on your speech. And if you're working on your speech, then every day you become stronger.
How about the hang-up drill?
Pardon?
How about the hang-up drill?
I think the hang-up drill is really
You've
good.
done it, right, Ramesh?
I've done it at various
I
support.
know you've done everything in stuttering. Okay. Go on with your story about hang-up.
I think the hang-up drill is really cool because I remember doing a hang-up drill once, and I rang somebody and said, it was an Indian restaurant, I said, Ramasaman speaking. Can I ask you when? And I was in peace for 30 seconds and the guy cut me off. But that empowers me.
That's cheating, Ramesh. That's not right.
I'm
What
sorry.
the hell?
It wasn't a hang-up drill.
It wasn't a
That
hang-up
was
drill.
just you putting the phone
Exactly.
down.
It
Sitting there in
been-
silence.
it just-
I think most people have actually dropped the phone on me after.
No wonder.
No
No wonder.
It's
What if
not a
the line
hang-up
cut
drill. Shit, Ramesh.
Hello, is
No.
anyone there?
No,
Total silence.
the idea is that you make a sound.
You have to
So-
get stuck
You
in a word.
stutter.
So
You stutter for 30 seconds. You don't be silent for 30 seconds.
it can be sound.
Yeah,
like,
because that's the
what-
way that I was taught at a support group.
What support group were you going to?
That's completely wrong.
And the
That's
guy was like,
cheating, dude.
just be silent, man. I was like, okay. And see him drop the phone, I was like, okay.
Can you do a hang-up drill right now, Ramesh? A right one. Make a sound.
Do it, Ramesh.
You can use only two sounds. First R, and the other one is S. So start on first, and then if that's not enough, go for S. Okay, Tom, can we borrow your phone?
My phone's in my bag.
Rafik,
Ramesh.
can we? Oh yeah, so call any hotel.
Yeah, so I stutter my name for 30 seconds.
You don't say nothing. You say S or R sound till they
You
hang up on you.
just say sounds.
till they hang up on
You
you.
don't say words, you say sound. You go,
Yeah. And then so
Until they hang up on you.
Yeah.
Call.
do it.
Yeah, okay, I'll do it.
and if he is still on the line after 1 minute, then
Hang up on motherfucker. He's too tough for us.
or you can thank him for his time and
Yeah, so
say bye
you
or something.
choose a place.
Mayfair Hotel.
Mayfair Hotel.
Tom, you choose a number, you dial.
Yes, I got.
They
So I got.
they respond and
yeah.
give to
So you just repeat the first sound of like any word or your name
sound. Yeah, until they hang
How
up.
long for?
for a minute.
Until they hang up. Make them hang up. No. Well, yeah. Do your thing. Just talk to them. Until they hang up.
For 1 minute.
As long as it takes.
As long as it takes. Make them hang up.
Put them on the speaker. Speaker. Ramesh. Put fuckers on the speaker.
I can't put this on speaker because they're connected to my hearing aids.
Oh, so fuck it. It's okay.
Third phone call.
That's cheating. Leave Ramesh alone. Make a sound, motherfucker.
Ra 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 sa 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 Ramassaman speaking. Excuse me, I've got a stammer.
No, I hang up on you. Fuck you. What are you doing? You fail. First of all, that's a fail.
What do you fail for?
Well, how do you fail?
Guy didn't hang up on you.
Yeah, but
You was not hard enough on him.
Sorry.
Go
Next time,
different
silence.
number and go hard. Like,
These hang up drills are
Silent block.
I'll do it for you if you can.
Are we gonna keep this on?
Fuck yeah.
but I thought
This is how we do podcast.
I thought it was meant to be after 1 minute. If they are still on the line, then you
hang up on
you
fuckers.
say, is it?
Fuck yeah. Why
Yeah,
wouldn't you?
that is the Alex version.
No,
of
but
the
that was
actual-
powerful though. What I learned from that is the first time I did that like that.
Yes.
Last time I had a minute's pause.
Last time we did nothing.
And I think
Like,
that
hello.
was very different to
Has
that
mine cut
one.
off?
That's
Because
fucking
I think
different.
this way it empowers us that people actually want to hear us
Yeah. See.
and they
A
want to
receptionist wants to hear
spend
you.
time sort of
Well,
Yes.
listening to us.
Guys.
we called
So-
the wrong number. Maybe they were really professional listeners. They can't hang up on you.
I think
Maybe we call a bookstore or something. Or Tesco. They would hang up on you.
Let us know more about how you felt about
Yeah.
doing the hang-up drill because
I thought
for
that was
our
very
listeners-
effective for our listeners. I think it was very effective because it gave me the power to actually speak to him. And even though that's the first ever time that I've ever done it like that, it gave me a lot of power in terms of, hey, somebody wants to listen to me.
No.
Normally, I would have thought before that they would cut me out. But I think a lot of these hotels have got a lot of training and they're used to dealing with people like that who are stammerers or
Every day
got
someone does
other
this to us.
issues because they have to be accommodating because in this world we live is a lot of different types of people with different difficulties, and I think this actually empowers everyone because we should stammer when we want, and I think it's very effective, this hang up drill, doing it like this, and I think I'll try it again.
Yeah.
Because when you're doing it for the first time like that, I thought, wow, this is quite scary. This guy's going to tell me to F off. But hey, this guy was actually quite willing to listen to me. And it was quite embracing.
Imagine a hotelier
It actually-
telling you to F off on
It
the
was
phone.
an experience thing. They were very. It was teaching me a lot about myself. Hey, even if I stammer, it's okay. I don't think, for example, recently wearing hearing aids, like now I've got short hair, haven't I? People can see me,
I can see you.
but I think can see my hearing aids. But I think it's a powerful thing when people can see it. I think hidden disability is more harder.
Yes.
I think when people can see your disability, it makes you a lot more stronger. Because
Stuttering
people on
must
the
be
train are
easy.
like saying to me on their priority seats, "You can sit here." It's like, wow, for the first time I ever noticed that people are being more embracing. Policemen have stopped me and said, "How are you?" And I think all of this is quite helpful. I think people actually support you more.
For showing your disability.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
That's the difficulty with things like autism and stammering. I think they're hidden, and I think people don't really acknowledge it as much. And I think for stammerers, I think you just have to let yourself go in the real world and let yourself be who you want. Because with me now, I can't really hide. People always see my hearing aids.
What you are talking about, Ramesh, is a stop holding back thing. You just stopped holding back, and now you can do anything, even call and make a hang up. But before that happened, before stop holding back happened, how to make us to use this deliberate disfluency? Why are we scared? I think it's coming out as a person who started, like this disclosure. I mean, I wanted I want to have advice to people, like hang up drill is a cool tool when you're already proficient with other things, right? I mean, I wanted just to challenge you because I know you're strong as tank and you can do anything. All right, but the other side of stuttering, like we all look up to you, up to your fluency. How aren't you don't care about deliberate disfluency and stuff?
Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, like how to get to stop holding back?
How do I get there?
Yeah, like you did everything as well, like contacts and stuff. The original question, Rafik, was discussing this technical part, like why are we holding back ourselves? Is it the barriers we may be removing, or is it maybe we building a road around it? I don't know.
I
That
think
was my point.
it's a journey, and that was part of my journey, I think, because I never done a hang-up drill like that. I think when you stutter to people, it's better than pauses. But anyway, that's another subject that we're going to leave behind now. And with this, I think I've used a lot of things to become stop holding back. For example, I read books by Susan Jeffers, Feel the Fear, Do It Anyway. I've read the book by Mark Manson. Also, other books out there which are really good. I think Chinese philosophy can be really good, where you see the world in different ways through proverbs. And also the poems in the Bible are really helpful. I think all of this, like literature and all of this, going to Toastmasters, speaking, feeling the fear and do it in any way. Even coming on this podcast was quite scary for me because it's a new environment. 2 years ago, I'd never done something like this. And always, you got to feel the fear in life. I think jobs and relationships, and you got to do it. Otherwise, you become hopeless and you become a victim to your own mentality. You become hopeless. And I think you got to keep on continuously doing these things, and then you stop holding back. Eventually, it's a journey. You're not going to reach there in one day. I think some of these books are at a different level where people just think, oh yeah, you're at that level, coastal breathing and all that. I think coastal breathing is important after the first sort of days of recovery and the journey, because, or any other breathing cycle. I think because stuttering is a learning difficulty caused by developmental issues to me. For example, breathing in the wrong way can cause you to stutter. And also, I think if you build your foundations by, firstly, I would say, ownership, making yourself assertively self-accept, and also committed to their cause, like committed to overcoming your stuttering, and also taking responsibility of yourself, then you overcome stuttering. You don't overcome stuttering by just sitting in your bedroom and just thinking, hey, I can overcome it. You got to take responsibility and doing all these things.
I've tried that before. It doesn't work.
You don't think?
I sat there in my room and I thought nothing happened.
Yeah, because when I was younger, I had a lot of anxiety issues, I'll be honest. And I think these anxiety issues have been controlled by me, taking ownership of my mind, and also pushing forward with several things that I've done over the years. I've been acting, been in bands, been doing a lot of things, but all of these things have all helped me. Hey, you're scoring us. Yeah, but all of these things can help.
Maybe A is at the door. Answer. I don't know. Probably not.
Nah, he would have called you.
He can't call me.
He can't call you.
Did you also notice how?
Practice a hang up drill on AA.
No.
Did you notice
It's like,
how
fuck off.
Ramesh just did the hang-up drill with no fears? He said, well, "What should I do? How should I do it?" He done it straight away. So we are speaking about ego. He had no ego at all. He just done it.
His ego was dead.
Dead ego.
Not attached to the phone calls. That's for sure. But ego can't be dead.
So we all must aspire to be like.
No, I aspire
Ramesh
to
is a
everyone here.
legend.
Everybody's on a spiritual level. Everybody is working on their body and mind, and I think we're at different levels, and we shouldn't think of this as somebody at a different level. I think Tom's at a great level, and Alex is growing a lot, and also you coming a long way on this video. And I think, but with me, my ego's been dead
My
for a
first
very
one.
long time. My ego's been dead since I was born, I think.
Man born without an ego. My God.
We discovered no ego. But I think DD is a topic that Simon Bailey talks about a lot, and I'd like to mention it here because it's important. So Tom, talk about DD and what do you think is important?
DD, in case you hadn't heard of it already, is deliberate disfluency. And essentially it is the act of stammering on purpose.
And with you, Rafik, so have you ever used it in the real world, and what are your experiences?
I have used it mainly on courses, but also for interviews. So when I start, like for example, a phone interview, I would be more disfluent than I would be later on in the phone call, so that I can center myself and I can tell my mind that I am a stammerer, which then helps me to speak much better as the phone call goes on. In face-to-face interviews, when I first walk in, I tell them that I have a stammer and I'm working on it, and I say all of this with deliberate disfluency. So every interview you go into, you must use it, and you must also disclose that you have a stammer, because then the rest of the interview will go so much easier. You can use your techniques so much better, and you will actually feel much more at ease. And if anyone is scared of how the interviewer would react to this, they've all asked me about stammering, they've all asked me what I have been doing, and they've also been very kind about it. So we shouldn't ever be scared of using this technique when we want to find work, or when we go into meetings, because many people don't care. And actually using the technique, you will actually be much more fluent. So just go ahead. And we are always in a rush to speak, yeah, and then you were stuck on 2 sounds for 1 minute, and then the person was still listening to you. So why should we feel rushed to speak when we have an example just 10 minutes ago of someone waiting for you to say just 2 words?
Rafik, can I ask, where do you not use deliberate disfluency?
When I meet new people, say when I'm out with friends, when I speak with family members who I don't usually speak with. When I'm with friends, I don't use it as well.
Why don't you use deliberate fluency in
Ego.
those things?
Ego, because I don't want to be seen as a stammerer, even though when I talk normally, everyone knows that I have it, but I still don't want to do it because of my ego. So I've only just recently gone back into working on myself, working on my speech, and this is one of the first things that I have slowly started to address. For example, this is my first podcast, and I was thinking, should I come here or not and be on video stammering? But then I thought, why not? New experience, fight the ego, just come and see how it is, and it's fine.
I remember a conversation that I had with Alex in April time when he said use voluntary stammering until you get bored of it. Use it until the world is finished, because your stammer.
When is the world finished?
I'm sorry, speaking like crazy scientist here, but
No,
use it
you're doing
until
great.
you become
How long,
crazy,
sorry?
because you'll kill your stutter if you use voluntary stammering, because the mind will accept it, and your mindset will change because you'll accept it, and you'll accept the process in which you're working on your speech. And I think voluntary stammering, you have to do it until you overkilled it.
Lads, I'm afraid I have to leave now.
Oh.
But you guys continue chatting.
5 more minutes.
Pleasure.
I have to go, I'm afraid.
Take
I got to be somewhere at 6 and I need to get home
Oh.
first.
He's
5
got a
more
date with
minutes.
his girlfriend.
5 more minutes. I really have to go. I
Alright.
have to go by like 5 at the latest, I promised myself. I was meant to go at 4:40.
We'll cut this podcast.
Bye, Tom. No. I want to expand on these things.
See you, Rafik.
Good to see you again, man.
Let's
Good to
see
see
it
you,
all.
Alex.
Thank you for coming.
No
Take care.
problem. Take care, my dudes.
I'll see you later, my friend.
I'll see you later.
Yeah, so you have to do it until you get bored.
Yep, it's all about overkill to the boring stage, right?
Yes, there's that, but I think with voluntary stammering, you have to work on it every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was a conversation that I had with Alex.
Yeah. But what we did, we pushed ourselves so far, right? And still it wasn't enough. Like me and you, we done so many contacts, more than anyone claimed they did, right? We actually did it, and still we felt that something is not there. So instead of doing thousands of those, we thought how to do 10 but hardcore ones, like quality ones where you push to the limits, right? And we pushed, and you, Ramesh, you pushed it to Simon Bailey limits. Like you are number 2, Mr. No holding back ever, right? He was the first one.
Yeah,
You were the second one. So
yeah, and we
you
went to
pushed it
City of
far.
Bath and dressed
Mhm.
up for the day. Met people, made videos. It was really helpful, that dressing up. People think it's a stupid concept, people dressing up in fancy dress and meeting people, but I think it's very important. It's important for us to be in that sort of situation where you're different, because it helps us with our stammer, and it teaches us that, hey, having a stammer is okay, we're different, and people accept that and they acknowledge that. And I think with this Mr. No Holding Back character, it's really great because you are different, and it's a psychological thing where, hey, if Mr. No Holding Back is this character who's very different, we're fine with stammering. There's nothing wrong with us. The world doesn't care. Because I think another thing that causes stammering to be an issue is that it's a hidden disability.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody notices until you do it. And I think that puts you at a disadvantage.
Also, we call them fluent speakers. They also stammer sometimes, but they associate it with being scared or having some anxiety. So they automatically think that we are stammering because we are scared of speaking with him or her. But but it's a cycle for us. It's a cycle of our past experiences. So most of the outside world, they don't understand why we stammer, and then so that that takes us as stammerers to introduce ourselves as stammerers and why we do it, and also for us to spread awareness of stammering as well.
For past experiences, you're talking about post-traumatic stress disorder, basically. And we have a lot of those built up, yeah.
So like we have a feared word or sound. Why? Because in the past we were stuck on this word or sound. So our subconscious, I think, memorizes this, and we find it hard to say this word in the future. And the way which we overcome this fear of a word or sound is by overkilling it. So we can use deliberate disfluency before we attack our feared word or sound, and then that helps us to say it much easier. Or we can keep making contacts, focusing on a word or sound. So we have to retrain our minds that we can say this word or sound and just keep overkilling it, and then we would reach a stage where we no longer fear it. So so our past experiences of a certain word or sound does affect our future way of saying it. So for example, if I get stuck on a word like Stratford or something, a week later when I would have to use it again, I would be scared of saying it and I would stammer on it. So we are told to overkill all of our words or sounds, because when I did my first course, during my contacts, I focused on 3 or 4 words which I had trouble with, but I also had some more words or sounds that I had some trouble with as well. But just focusing on just those 4, then I could say all other words or sounds easier. So have you ever experienced that before, overkilling, say, G words?
Yeah.
And say if you had a problem with N, did you find that only working on G you could say N better or something like that?
With me, there's one word that I struggled on before the course, and that was stammer. I think that was a psychological connotation to that word, because that word brought fear of stammering to me. But now I'm cool with saying stammer, because I've worked on it and I worked on my mind. But with me, there is no feared words or sounds. I think it's just situations. I think different situations, for example, formal interviews, for example, job interviews, meeting some girls for the first time. But I've overkilled that now. I think people have feared words, sounds, and situations. And I think all of these we have to identify first. And before the course was definitely situations for me. I never had feared words or sounds. I think I maybe overkilled them in the process without thinking about it.
Maybe. But when we trying to get over those feared words or sounds, it's when we trying to get control over our stuttering, right? So all those techniques we do, we have a motivation which is getting control, and this articulated eloquence. The way I read it, it was being in control and saying whatever you want to say when you want to say it. But if we consider for a moment that stuttering may be over-controlled speech, which is possible, right?
Yeah.
And
That meaning that a group of control freaks are trying to learn how to get more control. And I know studies were done that speech is only partly controlled. So when we talk, we're not always in control. What are we going to say?
Yeah.
It's half and half. It's a flow. So maybe when we start to let go the controls, maybe that would help.
So if we let go, then we shouldn't be using any techniques then.
That's right.
But how can you reach a stage of better fluency without using any techniques? Do you
No,
know how to?
I think that's very important. I think initially, for the first sort of 6 months, you have to use techniques and you have to embed the techniques. But I think after 6 months, you have to be freer in the way that you talk. Everybody will stammer, trust me. But it's just the way that you let yourself go. You have to let yourself go because without that, you'll never progress. I think in the essential stage, which is the first sort of part of joining a speech program, you have to use these different techniques. For example, hit and holds and block releases and all of these, but you have to embed them into your program or embed them into your way of talking, because if you don't, then you're never going to overcome stuttering because the fear level's a bit too high and you won't have the skills to work on your feared words and sounds and your situation. So you should be overkilling these in your first sort of 6 to 12 months.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So basically, you should get control of your things. But we people who stutter, we don't know when we have the control, and we never have a 100% of control. And people get overfeared words. I know they do. But then, just right after one feared word disappeared, they would find another one, like right away.
But I think that's on the experiential curve. I think as you start your therapy, you're going to find new words all the time. New words will enter your...
Well, yeah, exactly. I thought at first that it's like a rewarding mechanism. Each time we come over some feared word or feared situation, our brain rewards us with the serotonin and the dopamine. So people can get addicted to recovery and constantly stay there doing circles and circles
I agree, dude.
while feeling good about themselves doing it. And that circle of brain reward addiction, that's scary. And I know like many people already got control, but they refuse to believe it. So you have to stop somewhere. Like, okay, guys, I think I now have 88% of control. That should be enough for me to do other things.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
I mean, exactly as you, Rafik, said that when I asked Ramesh to do the phone calls, I didn't smell any fear on Ramesh. No.
You dive straight in.
It was okay. Where's my cell phone, right?
Yeah.
And that means that Ramesh is in control of himself, but he knows that in a few moments he might let it go a little bit, and that's maybe called fluency, when you have control but you're letting it go.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, I don't know.
I agree with you. I think there's a level. Otherwise, it does become addiction. I think with this issue, we can probably relate to things like alcohol and drugs.
Yes. But basics has to be learned. Like you learn hit and hold, block, release, deepen breath tone, eye contact, whatever working for you, and then you just move on. You check yourself how you addicted to a system. So if you cannot survive, you should not survive more than 2 years, for example. Like then things start to fade away with the memory like a natural thing. But in these 2 years, you can be okay between the huge top-ups.
I think it's a lot shorter than that. I think stuttering journey, if you use a program, should be 12 to 18 months. I think that should be your recovery period, your journey. And I think you should use everything in your powers, like for example eye contact, all these physical techniques, use different breathing techniques. I think you should embed it hard for the first 12 to 18 months. You have to go in really hard. Do things like podcasts, do Toastmasters, order food,
Yes.
do everything crazy. Just do it, man. Just sort of, even speaking to that lady out there or wherever, just don't feel a fear and do it anyway. I think people get too hung up, and I think after that initial incubation period of 12 to 18 months where you've done everything, I think your speech therapy program should become boring. Like, you've done everything, haven't you? And then you reach a level where you say, oh yeah, I accept it now.
Would you say that fluent speakers, would you say that they use formulation, or do they just speak on the go, or do they think about what they want to say as they are saying it, or before they're saying it? Because we are told to use formulation, but that's an aspect of over control.
No, because formulation becomes embedded. Because when I'm speaking now, I know what I have to say. Because when I worked hard for the first 3 months, I did use every part of the checklist. So, for example, formulation is release residual air, resist
Don't-
time pressure, release
don't
residual
do-
air, center and clarify, formulate. Yeah, so you have to go through this different phase, and you have to work on your formulation skills. For example, I know mostly, apart from spontaneous events, that I formulate well because I've got my thoughts in my head.
So you would say that fluent speakers, they formulate as they speak, or do they speak on the go? They speak on the
Fluent
go?
speakers can speak in spontaneous manner.
They're just like us. There is no difference in terms of approaching the speech. And look, and I can prove it to you. They have time to formulate, because we have a time to anticipate the block. And the reason why they're asking us to formulate is that we can spread on each word some of the technique. So okay, on this third word I use hit and hold. On the second word, a little bit of block release. Here I inhale.
Yeah, makes sense.
And while we're formulating and you do, I did delivery dissonance and I end up in a real block. And then you do all that. That makes you sound like a stuttering person, but not inside you. Inside of yourself, you're fluent because you know exactly what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And every single word, and no words escaping from you. So you speak fluent on inside, you stutter on outside, and that is a part of disclosure. And that's why all the techniques makes you stutter on outside.
Yeah.
But once you realize that why we're using all those techniques is just to make a complete disclosure out of ourselves as a person who stutter. So what you do, you accelerate this process. You put some steroids in it, right? You start open up more in every different place to increase this internal fluent situation.
Yeah. So we are saying that we should formulate for at least the initial stage of our recovery, and then once we improve in our speaking skill, then we will find that we can speak much better just on the go.
I think so.
No, because Rama Shiva, he writes about habits. Yeah, he's a friend of ours. He's been on podcasts in the past. So I think stuttering is a habit. It's a habit that we picked up. And I think with Rama Shiva's thinking is that we should erase his habits by new habits. So we should be working on things like formulation, work on eye contact, work on these different elements. So we get rid of habits by forming new habits. But you have to work really hard.
Well, there are two types of habits. Ones you enjoy, and the one is like I broke my leg, I would limp for half a year because of a pain, And the next half of a year, just because I used to, this is what Rama maybe is talking about. This habit after your leg is broken, but you have to heal first. You have to take medicine, use all these techniques and stuff. But when your leg is straight and you open up about your recovery completely to your teammates or something, and then they start to treat you fairly, and you start to play hard again. And I think at some point we were all broken, and stuttering became a habit or like bad joke, right? But to come out of it, like I always thought that it was this being open about it. But then you told me to aim for fluency, and that twisted my perspective about letting go of the control. But now there is this stop holding back thing is coming up. So with the stop holding back, it also gives you enormous amount of fluency if you commit to not holding back 100%. So as much as your commitment,
And this goes back to a phase of enlightenment. There was this Saturday evening in January. It was really cold, really dark. Thing was snowing, and there was me, Alex, and Ruben,
Skyping,
and Ayo. And you said, what did you say?
I said, fuck it, I'm fluent. I'm fluent as fuck, and
That was
I'm
like,
fluent. I mean, yeah.
I never seen something like that before.
I was fluent, right?
Yeah, you were.
Am I still fluent? Not really.
Yeah, you are.
I am fluent, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, I'm
And-
just checking.
What was the thing that you discussed? What caused your stammering? It was ego related, wasn't it?
I felt responsibility somehow. I felt enormous weight of responsibility, and I thought that I can't be bothered with the shit anymore. Like I can't play with it. I can't hide behind the stuff. Oh, and the other one, I remembered my first time. I will ruin the whole podcast if I start to
It was
to
about
tell
the
this
school
story.
children.
I wanted to talk about what Rafik said. Yeah, well, yeah. Later I'll tell my story, but now about what Rafik relapse. We don't always go like all the way to the bottom where we were, right? We go almost there. And how to measure this bottom of relapse? I learned to measure it. I thought it's how wide you open about your stutter. This is how deep you go down. So we go on the course, we're open about stuttering 100%.
Yeah.
Right? That makes us like extremely fluent.
But I think this term relapse, I think it's very poor. We don't relapse. We just don't. We just have a bad day. We just have a bad phase. Hey, it's okay. Tiger Woods had a bad period.
I'll tell my story, fuck it. I think it's important. So I remember the first time I started. Like, do you, Rafik,
First
remember
time.
the first time? Not the first one people told you.
I remember the first time where I felt that I wasn't speaking normally, but
Oh,
yeah, well, not the first time that I stammered. I was talking to my teacher in year 6 or in year 5 at school, and the bell went to say that it is the end of break time, and because the bell went, my teacher had to go, so I was speaking much faster because I knew that I didn't have much time left, and I could feel my lungs and my stomach tightening up because I was speaking so fast that I had no more breath left, and that was the first time that I remember that I was actually struggling to speak because like we've got some home videos when I was like a kid. I wasn't stammering, and then just after that time, when I always felt rushed to speak, was when I was really young, and then that's when it started slowly. So it wasn't until I was like 8 or 9 years old that I first started.
Before going to school that day, did you know that you talk funny? Before
No.
that or no?
No, I had never felt that tension in my diaphragm or in my chest or in my stomach before,
How
and
about
uh,
you?
and even like when I watched like home videos in the past, I noticed that I didn't stammer at all. But I think for me it started when I would always feel rushed to speak because I was speaking so fast and I had no more breath left to speak. And then obviously then when you have no air flowing through your vocal cords, then you start stammering. So yeah, so that was my earliest memory.
Basically, resistant time pressure.
hmm which I still struggle with now. But when I reached a stage of good fluency after I started working on my speech, it was when I was talking slower. And even on my first course, when I did my contacts, no, even after my second day on the course, I didn't stammer once. And when I did my contacts, 100 contacts, I also didn't stammer once as well, because
Nice.
I took my time.
Nice.
So if I get back to that stage, then I know for a fact that I will at least improve again. So and that's what I'm going to start working on every day, at least when I talk with family members at home. Just talk much slower, formulate. So I know for me, my big factor in my stammering is speaking too quickly, and I think everyone has has their base point about why they stammer and why it started. And for me, it was that feeling like I haven't got attention from my listener and that I have to talk quickly.
Well, it's a irrational fear, obviously,
Mm.
but yeah, it's a part of stuttering. Ramesh, do you remember the first time you stuttered?
Yeah, when I was at school, I used to say yes, sir, or yes, madam, to when the register was on, but I couldn't say that fluently. I would be like stuttering. I would be. My surname starts with an S, Suman. So all of these names would go out in sort of alphabetical order by surname. My name would be the last. And all of this panic and fear and all of this sort of stuff just built on me. And I struggled to say yes, sir, yes, madam. So I think with me, it's a lot of an anxiety issue. Probably, I don't know, some experiences through childhood, but I think I really worried about things like what job I do, what car I drive, what relationship I be. I used to think about these things early on, and I think it provided a lot of anxiety for me. I think a lot of this is psychological, and this is why I said to AO that stammering is psychological, and this is where this no holding back culture comes from.
See, so that shows that even though that we all say that we have stammers, we are all different. We all have different levels. My surname starts with a Z, and I was last, but I had no problem saying here sir, here miss, yes, yes sir, yes miss, because I wasn't thinking about the anxiety that they have to go through every name. Also, what I find strange is before I went on the mobile program and I learned about controlling speech and techniques, I could read from a book without stammering at all. So when I did presentations at school,
Yeah, so what were the circumstances where you'd stammer most?
in every no, when I would have to ask for something. So if I would have to ask something from a teacher or just anyone, but I could read in front of my class out loud without stammering because I knew what I was saying. But after I learned about controlling speech, then even if I read out loud from a book, then I still stumble. So maybe that shows that over controlling speech can also have some adverse effects, but we have already spoken about that we need to go through an initial stage of over control, and then afterwards we have to let go.
Yeah, we do. But we need to, that control period needs to stay within us. So all of these techniques that we picked up, we should know how to use them.
From time to time, yeah. Of
But
course.
we have to let ourselves go in life. We just can't become control addicts or alcoholics or speakaholics. We have to just let ourselves go at some stage. Otherwise, you just become a paranoid stammerer. Like yesterday, I was with my life coach, and she said, "What is your ID?" I said, "I'm a stammerer." She said, "No, you're not, mate." She said, "You are a reform stammerer. You should change your ID, change your identity after a while." Because now I don't stammer. It's because I've built the mechanisms, and I know I might have a period where I stammer, but I've worked hard on myself, and different circumstances I can do. I've controlled my ego, as you saw in that 1 minute drill. I can do all of that, it's cool, but you have to change your identity in life. You have to change your personality as well. A lot of these people that you see on these stammering courses, I am a stutterer. But really, they are reformed stutterers, most of them. But because of this ID they got in their head, it's I am a stutterer.
Well, you have to wear this label long enough to like get accepted to it. I mean, you only can let go this label I'm a stutterer. I think only after you fully accepted it.
I think I've accepted it.
Well, you accepted it. You don't need it anymore. Now you're not afraid to be shown as a fluent person, because now you can. So this label has to go out of your body. Yeah. In many other cases, I mean, my label sometimes like appears, but then I throw it away. Like that's why I texted everyone that I'm fluent. That was a challenge as well to my fluency. Have you got a message like in the winter time? I'm fluent.
Where? What was that?
The chat Eugene created for a reminder for his support group.
I'm part of that chat, but I don't think that I read it.
No one reads it, except a few people who got angry. But a few people actually congratulated me.
No, I
Thank
was
you.
really happy.
Yeah.
That was a
You were happy.
enlightenment. Yeah, I was happy. I was like, wow, this is.
You were there, you were there.
I was there. I was like, wow.
Oh, yeah, my
Me and Aya were like, wow. And it was like a cold Saturday night where there was snow in the floor. It's like everything was so dark, and we were like, wow, this is amazing. How has this guy done it?
well, my memory was you guys' memory kind of suck, you know. Like this story from a first time stuttering in a class. Yeah, we have. But what I remembered all of a sudden, my first time I ever stumbled on a word. So I was about 3 years old, and it was a tense situation. And I wanted to say something, and I couldn't. It just stuck in my head because I probably had no idea what I was going to say anyway. And at that moment, everyone left me alone. Like, so I was in peace. I'm like, fuck, this works. But I think that chimp thing, it clicked in me. So if I stammer, I'll be just left alone.
Alex, I got one question for you. Yeah. Some people are scared of heights. We all have different fears.
Right.
Say if you were scared of heights, yeah, but you jumped off the tallest structure in the world, yeah, and you jumped off it and you survived. Would you still have the fear of heights?
I survived many jumps. I would still fear of heights, but you can always. But yes, I think yes. In terms of stuttering, what do I fear here?
Because
Where
we
I
can
fear-
relate to this stuttering cycle.
Exactly. So if stuttering is a fear of heights, right? So what we afraid when we stutter? We afraid to be perceived as a fluent people, because we're not. So we're afraid of fluency, right? So the worst thing that stuttering person really can do is to proclaim his fluency, because everyone will challenge it now, right? So when I did that, everyone thought I'm crazy, right? But that was like, I felt that I can take anyone, any challenge, any speaking situation, and I still do. But I noticed after becoming fluent, you notice that you stumble over shit.
Yeah.
Like there is a difference though. Real stuttering, like real stuttering block, and the stumbling in a tight situation. When things are tight and something extreme happening, extraordinary, we will all stumble, right? But we don't stutter in those situations, we stumble. But a person who stutter make out of it a stuttering block, and we know the difference. So as long as I don't have those stuttering blocks, I can't come out, I'm fluent. The first block I can't overcome, or I'm no longer fluent.
Yeah, so
You know.
this sort of brings this to mind. Why do people who are recovered keep on going on courses, keep on getting therapy?
They didn't recover it. Who told you they didn't recover? Give me one fluent Maguire person. I mean, I know a few people who speak well in Maguire environment. I know those, many, but I met a few outside of the comfort zone, and I saw people start to block. Course instructors out of the comfort zone blocking. The most fluent people I met is you, Simon Bailey, and you told me to aim for fluency.
Yeah, because if you define fluency, it's speaking without having a stammer, or without having shudders, or without having blocks. So if you're on a speech therapy course or on a program or
They all
some sort,
struggle, dude.
you should always aim for fluency. What's the point of turning up? Did you ever see athletes who are at the Olympics not run fast? Have you ever seen Mr. Strongest Man just forget about it? You have to keep on aiming for it.
We're talking about Maguire here, right? Like, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, Maguire equalizes everyone in the room. It's a comfort zone. It's a nice place to be. Well, in control there. So that's why people go there. And then we already spoke about this mind rewarding action system, is this mistaken activity for false achievement. Yes, you need to do it 6 times, maybe 8, maybe 25. But when you're doing 40 or something like more, or maybe you're already lying to yourself, maybe you didn't push yourself like really fucking, like, everyone knows the checklist, but no one talks about articulation, for example. Try to articulate on a contact, there is no way you would block. You know,
Articulation is very important because you're saying the words in the manner you want it. And then you achieve it because your mindset's based on working towards articulation. If I said, it's referring back to the book by Susan Jeffers, she said to people, I am a strong person. She did something, a test where somebody's arm, she said, I'm a strong person, I'm a strong person, and the person's arm stood strong. And then she did the same thing with the same person, I'm a weak person, I'm a weak person, then the arm fell down. So I think with articulation it's very important that you really focus on that. It improves your stamina, man. It's a proven element of anything that if you work towards, I'm an articulate person, I'm an articulate person, I'm an articulate person, you become an articulate person.
So how would you work on articulation?
Well, by practice. It's this practice of working on your speech. But articulation has different sort of degrees. It's different comfort zones, different situations. So you have to keep on addressing all of those different circumstances. Like, for example, I think I've overcome it in most situations, but I think if I'm speaking to somebody who had never done or had met now, for example, if an old lady came here, I might struggle. It's a different situation, isn't it? I'm not used to dealing with elderly ladies, am I? So you have to keep on working on your articulation, different comfort zones, different situations, different. You have to keep on pushing ahead with things. Otherwise, you're never going to overcome stuttering. I think one of the things which I had was that I spent time with my family and my friends and my partner. My speech was fantastic. I was thinking, wow, this is fantastic. I'm a fluent speaker. But then I ended up in a room full of other people. This was early on in my recovery. And I was stammering like a lot more. And then what I did was I thought, yeah, that is a different situation. I have to go into that environment again, keep on doing it, keep on doing it. Then my speech became better. And this is where stammerers, I think, have a small confinement of, hey, I'm a better speaker because they're used to speaking to the same people, same situations, same comfort zones. You have to stretch those. You have to keep on actually putting yourself out. One of the areas I struggled was on the train, saying to people, excuse me. You have to be assertive, don't you?
Yes.
So I like, wow.
Excuse me.
So I was
That's
like,
right.
now I'm like, excuse me.
That's right.
And the guy's like, whoa, get out, man. Yeah, but you have to work to these. And I think the journey of stuttering is a very long journey.
Here's a long journey. Yeah.
But you have to keep on working on your articulation.
So,
It's not a long journey, it could be as long as you want, but you have to stretch yourself out and do it. Like, you're scared of public speaking, go to Toastmasters, go to Speaker's Corner on a Sunday. We used to go.
We did it. Yeah. We've checked all the marks there is to check almost. But well, those things they're actually easy to find if anyone wants to start attacking those. It's like everything you're avoiding. Like right now at this moment, making the phone calls here, you go ahead and do it. But does that all means that the recovery from stuttering lays through dissolving this ego situation? Like those barriers we built, barriers out of a meanings we, out of a holy shit, out of a psychological weight we put into things.
Yeah, I think it is. I think Susan Jeffers talks about this chatterbox in your head. And I think that's created by the ego, where your head's talking to you. Oh dear, I'm going to stammer. Oh dear, I'm going to speak bad in that situation. Oh dear. I overcome that part of my mind by using positive affirmations, really working on things, concentrating on positive mind, going back to Jim Rohn, who's the other guy, Watts? Andy Watts?
Alan Watts?
Alan Watts, yeah, he's fantastic.
Fantastic, right?
Alan Watts teaches you everything that you need to know about life. And I think if you keep on listening to these people, you overcome everything in life, don't you?
Jordan Peterson as well.
Yeah.
All those people.
And these guys are great thinkers, and I think people need to kill this chimp or this chatterbox in your brain. Because that chatterbox tries to defend you. Oh yeah, somebody may say next Monday, I'm going to go and get a job. That Monday may never come, you just got to do it today.
you guys have to send me all of these names and all of
Oh,
these books and stuff.
we will. Sure, we will.
Yeah, because you need to be taught the truth and you need to rewire your brain. So I think the mindset is very important.
So if you want to work on articulation, you have to focus saying every word how you know they should be said, right? So if you make a contact, you should say to yourself that I want to articulate every word that I say to this person how I should be, right? Or is it you get a book and then you read out loud and then you say every word right? Which way is it? Which you would work on articulation?
Well, you can work it in it whatever way suits you. But I think we're talking about ego here, and I think it's the
Context.
ego which will always make it more difficult for you to overcome that articulation. Because once you've achieved articulation, there'll be other levels to articulation. When do you stop with articulation? Do you carry on? You have to reach a stage where you're happy with it, and you told your brain and you revived your brain, hey, this is okay now. I can't do more than this.
Okay.
Hey, we weren't born with great speech, but there are a lot of people with other difficulties, and I think you have to teach yourself, hey, I can't do more than this. I'm a human being. Am I right, Alex?
And that called fluency. When you up to the levels you can be, that's probably it. But articulation, if you Google it, there are two meanings. One is the meaning of pronunciation, enunciation of a sound of a word, and the other side of definition of articulation is a well-planned something, like speech. So articulated eloquence, and eloquence is being defined as a fluency. So when we say eloquent, we mean fluent. Articulated eloquence means well-planned fluency. So well-planned part is half of it, and the fluency part is where we first part in control, second part is out of control. Even our goal as a Maguire program, it tells us to do that, but everyone focus on this control. I think Rafik was asking you about sound enunciations as it is in a checklist. In the checklist, they don't mean to reformulate your formulation. they mean announce, pronounce, all those.
Yeah, because articulation, if you look at beyond stuttering, is based on inflection, based on clarity, based on conciseness. And that's articulation. But I think,
Different definition entirely.
yeah, so really it's based on one person's thoughts. But I think over time you can work on your speech. I think one of the things that I did a lot with Maguire, what probably a lot of Maguires do, is that I looked at a lot of psychological books. I related to the works of Watts, I related the works of Susan Jenners, and also Jeffers, and also I based it on Dr. Stephen Peters or Professor Stephen Peters, and it was really helpful that I incorporated this in my journey, because these guys tell you the truth. Like Watts tells you the truth, doesn't he?
He's a philosopher. In terms of reading, we can't really compare ourselves to Maguire people. If we compare ourselves to all Maguire people, half of Maguire people didn't finish reading the book. Like, and you know you didn't, right? we only have 42 listeners anyway, and half of them didn't finish the book, believe me. So when you say Maguire people, I hope you are referring to elite. But elite, that's a questionable part as well. Like, what's elite? Is it the person who fluent in a room? Or is it a person who is more fluent than others outside? Course instructors, they just fluent in a room, believe it or not, apparently. I don't know many, but I saw many course instructors struggle with the blocks. I never saw Simon Bailey struggle though.
I think the only place where you become better is
But
by
he's
doing,
not a Maguire as well. Yeah, go on.
by doing things like podcasts, by doing
It's a
the public speaking that we do.
coming out thing. Yeah, it's my exercise, like my challenges I do to prove myself that I'm in control, but I already did that, so maybe I should stop doing that.
Yeah, because with podcasts, I
Just
would
let
say
it go
that
and stop doing the podcast.
me and Alex have made
No, I'm serious, I checked.
we must have made like hundreds of appearances in different podcasts.
Well, yeah, famous. Doesn't matter. Yeah, I think it's. I'm not famous enough to stop.
We always have to keep going.
Yeah, we have to keep on finding new
Yeah.
areas.
This was a coming out for you, Rafik.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
yeah, no problem.
Now the whole world will know that you are a person who started and you're absolutely okay with it. You
Don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ramesh, you just-
Because like, what does hiding help you with? Nothing, right?
Nothing.
So-
It's living in denial, becoming a victim of your stutter, which people are on stutter community when they start being a little bit sort of, oh yeah, why is that person happy to be a stammerer? It doesn't make sense to me.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I applaud you for coming out.
Thank you. Yeah.
Welcome to Finding Voices podcast. Alexander Kuzmenko was here.
Rafik Zagali, thank you for listening.
Ramesh, man, thank you again.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Bye.